Hey y'all, welcome back to another hunting ammo ballistics gel test. Today I've got a for you. We've got Prvi Partizan 308 Winchester, 150, 165 grain, and 180 grain soft points. Let's see how they do. And here's my test rifle, a Ruger American Gen 1. Yes, I did the custom paint job myself. It's got a 22-inch barrel, and I did have it threaded for a suppressor. And of course, I've got one of my handmade leather cartridge cuffs on here. I've got 308 stamped on the front, and a whitetail buck on the back. Check out my website, shopmasonleather.com. I'd love to make you one. I'll be taking 3 shots into ballistics gel from 100 yards. So let's shoot it. And we are down here at the blocks after shooting the 150, 165, and 180 grain Prvi Partizan soft points out of the 308 Winchester. We caught all 3 bullets from each load. Let's see if I can go over all this without losing my breath. So the 150's over here. It's tough to see the bullets. There's one there, and then there's one way down in there. The one way down in there is at 25 inches, and these two are at 29 inches. And it looks like we got some mushrooming and expansion. It'll be interesting to see when we dig them out. Coming on back, and that's deep penetration for a 150 grain soft point. I wouldn't have thought they would have gone that deep, but they did. So as far as the wound cavity goes, coming in, they open up a little 1.5 inch mark. They really start to open up, and then they taper off right here at about 9 to 9.5 inches. The wound cavity is, closing up, and then they just keep on penetrating through. So not as devastating as some loads, but kind of par for the course for a 308 soft point. And then on to the 165s. Now these are a little different. These are boat tail bullets for what it's worth. The 150s and 180s are annotated as just regular soft point, but on the box, the 165s say they are soft point boat tails, so make of that what you will. Penetration wise, we got 27 inches, and these two are right here neck and neck at about, we'll give those two 28.5 inches of penetration. So consistent, if nothing else. It looks like we got some good expansion on those two. Of course, we'll pull them out here in a second, but on average, a little bit deeper than the 150s. That's always nice to see. As weight goes up, you'd expect penetration to go up. And then for the wound cavity, pretty similar to the 150, about 1 to 1.5 inches in, they open up. Real nasty wound cavity, and then by 10 inches, they've kind of closed up and keep on penetrating through. Looks like one of them may have turned sideways or something to keep that wound cavity open right there, but the other ones look like they ended at about the 10-inch mark. A little bit bigger wound cavity than the 150s. And then on to the 180s. Here's where it gets interesting. So one of the bullets right here separated. We have the core, the lead core back here at 21 inches. And then we have what looks like the jacket at about 24.5 inches. So for the sake of, metrics, we'll count the jacket that went deeper. So we'll give it 24.5. And then the other 2 bullets went quite a bit deeper. We got one right here almost poking out of the block at about 30.5 inches. And then one went all the way to the 3rd block back here, and that's at about 32 inches. So the 180s went nice and deep. At least these 2 did. This bullet separated. That's, you never like to see that, but here it is. And then wound track wise, the 180s, see if I can even get the lighting. The lighting's making it tough to see. The wound tracks are not as devastating as the 150s or 165s. They seem to be a bit narrower and longer from about, the 1 inch mark, 1.5 inch mark. They start to open up. They don't get quite as big. They're narrower, and they keep going. It's tough to see with the lighting, but they taper off slower, and they go all the way back to about the 12, 13, 14 inch mark before it closes up, and then the bullets just keep on penetrating through. So let's go ahead and dig all these out and take a look. All right, y'all, so we've got the 3 different Prvi Partizan loads, the bullets pulled out of the gel blocks. We've got the photo of them right here. Let's go ahead and hit all the numbers. We got a lot to get through with 9 different bullets. Let's go ahead and hit it. Up top, we've got the 150 grains. In the middle are the 165s, on the bottom are the 180s. For the 150s, weight retention, 126, 131, and 132 grains for an average of 130 grains weight retention. That's 86%. Not bad for a very inexpensive cheap cup and core bullet. They performed really well. For the 165s, we saw 151, 153, and 156 for an average of 153 grains. That's 93% weight retention, so a little bit better weight retention across the board. Again, excellent for a cheapo cup and core lead and copper bullet. For the 180s, we saw 125, 149, and 159 for an average of 144 grains. So actually less weight retention than the 165s for whatever reason, that's what happened, for 80% weight retention. Still not bad for what they are. And moving on to expansion, take a look at the bullets here. They all expanded very well with the possible exception of the 180 on the bottom right there. That one didn't expand quite as uniformly. It looks like some of the jacket did break off when it was penetrating through. But by and large, the other 8 bullets all expanded very, very well. Fairly uniform, fairly concentric. They're all going to make nice holes. For the 150s, we saw 0.58, 0.66, and 0.67 inches for an average of 0.64 inches expanded diameter. That's 2.1x expansion. For the 165s, we saw 0.63, 0.67, and 0.69 inches for an average of 0.66 inches. That's 2.2x expansion, so actually a little bit more than the 150s. For the 180s, we saw 0.59, 0.60, and 0.70 inches for an average of 0.63 inches for 2x expansion, so the least out of the 3 bullet weights, which is what I would expect from the heaviest bullet of the bunch. Velocity-wise, for the 150s, we saw 28.42 for the high, 28.32 for the low, for an average of 28.35, versus the factory build velocity, which I found on Prvi Partizan's website, of 2,805 feet per second. So we actually came in 30 feet per second faster than factory build velocity. Not the first time that I've seen it, always a pleasant surprise. Some Prvi Partizan ammo seems to be loaded pretty hot, and this is no exception. For the 165s, we saw 27.19 for the high, 26.98 for the low, for an average of 27.05, versus the factory build of 2,674 feet per second. So that's 31 feet per second faster than factory build velocity. Again, nice and hot. Love to see it. For the 180s, our high was 25.43, our low was 25.24 for an average of 25.33 versus the factory build velocity, coincidentally, of 2,543 feet per second, which is an exact tie for our high velocity of the bunch, so that's always fun to see. Overall, our average was 10 feet per second slow. Still no slouch, still a lot better than a lot of ammo out there. This Prvi Partizan 308 stuff seems to be loaded nice and hot. And our estimated impact velocities down there at 100 yards would be for the 150s, 2,637 feet per second, for the 165s, 2,318 feet per second, and for the 180s, 2,356 feet per second. On to penetration. For the 150s, we saw 25 inches, 29 inches, and 29 inches for an average of about 28 inches of penetration. For the 165s, 27, 28.5, 28.5 for an average of 28 inches of penetration. So almost identical for the 150s. The average is identical at least. For the 180s, we saw 24.5, 30.5, and 32 for an average of 29 inches of penetration, so on average a little bit more, but across the board nearly identical penetration for all 3 bullet weights. Pretty interesting, and also very good. All of these went way deeper than a lot of other comparable ammo on the market. And kinetic energy wise, for the 150s going on average 2,835 feet per second, we're looking at 2,676 foot-pounds at the muzzle, and 2,315 foot-pounds down there at 100 yards. For the 165s going on average 2,705 feet per second, we're looking at 2,680 foot-pounds at the muzzle and about 2,318 foot-pounds down there at 100 yards, almost identical to the 150s. And for the 180s going on average 2,533 feet per second, we're looking at 2,564 foot-pounds at the muzzle and about 2,218 foot-pounds down there at 100 yards. All right, y'all, so it's time for my final thoughts on these Prvi Partizan loads for the 308 Winchester, the 150, 165, and 180 grain soft points. First, I've got my cheat sheet here of all the different data. I can't remember all this. I got to read it off as I'm talking to you guys about it. But something that I noticed actually, when I was going over the kinetic energy, is that compared to some other loads that I've done, the kinetic energy numbers aren't quite as high. But when we were talking about the velocity of these Prvi Partizan loads, I kept saying, you know, they're loaded hot. As compared to their factory build velocity, yeah, they meet it or exceed it. But I went back and checked, and each one of these loads, the factory velocity, the factory stated velocity, is actually quite a bit under some of the competition. For example, I'll use the 180s for example. The Prvi Partizan factory velocity is 2,543 feet per second, right? Well, Remington core locked 180 grains for a 308, it's 2,620 feet per second is the factory build velocity. So it's almost an 80 foot per second difference. And the same goes for 165s. When I looked at the Sierra Sportmaster ammunition I recently tested, that factory velocity was 2,760 feet per second versus the Prvi Partizan of 2,674. So almost 100 feet per second lower. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take back what I was saying about the stuff being loaded hot. It's really not. It's actually kind of loaded, kind of par for the course. Maybe even a little slow. But hey, at least they're given realistic numbers, you know, on their website and they're actually hitting them. So all in all, I think these loads all performed really well. We had great weight retention for what they are and as cheap as they are. Really good expansion, nice and uniform as well, and absolutely excellent penetration. So if I was looking for a budget option for a hunting ammo for my 308 Winchester, I wouldn't hesitate to use any of this stuff. I don't think the deer is going to know a difference. I wouldn't hesitate to use it on deer, wild pigs, anything like that. What I would do is just buy a box of each, shoot them out of my rifle, and see which bullet weight my particular rifle shoots the best, and I would probably just go with that. And in a day and age where ammo prices continue just to go up and up and up, Prvi Partizan might be an option for you. So if you've used this ammo on anything, let us know in the comments how it did. And here's the back of the box for these Prvi Partizan 308 loads. No real useful information, no promo information. It just kind of talks about, you know, they produce quality ammo. There's a little bit more info on their website, but not a whole heck of a lot. And make sure you check out my website, shopmasonleather.com. Everything is handmade by me just for you. Cartridge cuffs, slings, even coffee mugs showing off all your favorite hunting cartridges. Perfect for deer camp. And I bet if you head over right now, there's a great deal waiting for you. I look forward to serving you through my leatherwork. The link is in the pinned comment, or just type shopmasonleather.com into your web browser. And if you want early access to all my videos, become a channel member. The link to join is in the pinned comment. And click one of these cards for more hunting ammo ballistics gel tests.